how to successfully ransom a child. Honestly, I'm only doing this because I am sick of hearing about people kidnapping kids and doing it all wrong. I have successfully ransomed over a dozen children. Some might call me an expert. I want to tell you how to do it correctly. Maybe then you'll start doing it right. I'm going to use my most recent conquest as an example. Her name is Sophie. You don't need to know my name. The first step is to choose a kid. Gender doesn't matter, but I prefer girls. If you want the best ransom, you'll want to pick a family that is tight-knit. The more the parents love the kid, the more they'll give up to get it back. Choose a family in a town you don't live in. Ideally, it should be at least an hour away. You must have no connection to the family. They don't know you, but you will learn everything about them. I picked Sophie because she had braided pigtails. I liked that. She was just big enough to do some things on her own, but still little. Small, smooth. I grabbed Sophie on our way home from school. But before taking her, I did my research. This is where so many people fail. You have to study the family. You have to know when they leave the house, what hobbies they have, who visits, and where the breaks in the chain are. You need to spend a lot of time watching, waiting. There's so much waiting, but it makes the prize so much better. Sophie's family lived in a farmhouse in a small town. Their police force consisted of a sheriff and only a few officers. A smaller police force will help you. To make yourself less noticeable, don't use the same car to watch the house in. Changing colors and kinds of car will make it impossible to track you. It took 5 months for the perfect opportunity. Sophie usually walked home with a friend. The way home was through a field, out of sight from any house. But the friend was a barrier. I was lucky. The friend was sick. She didn't go to school. So Sophie walked alone, her backpack hanging off one arm, her precious blonde hair braided in those long silken pigtails. Don't hurt her. Make it fast. One arm around the diaphragm, the other over her mouth. She is small. Carry her to your car. Don't lean in and smell her hair. Once you have the kid, the real work starts. You'll want to send a ransom note in the mail. Emails and phone calls are too easily traceable. A letter you can simply place in any mailbox. Leave the return address blank. Keep her quiet. No one can hear her, but silence makes it better. In your letter, you'll explain that you have the child. You will not harm the child as long as the family is willing to pay the ransom. As far as the amount of money, it needs to be a reasonable amount. Significant enough to warrant an abduction, but low enough that a typical family could raise the amount. I usually stick between $20,000 and $50,000. An average family can get a loan for that amount if needed. Ideally, the letter should arrive the day after the kid is taken. The family will have already called the police. This letter will incite even more fear. You cannot go to the house. Do not drive by. Do not go to the town, no matter how much you want to. And you will want to. You may watch the news. You may rub the strands between your fingers. You may plan your next move, but nothing else. In the first letter, you'll simply say you will call with more instructions. Do not call. The family will be waiting by the phone. They will not leave the house. The FBI may have been called. A wiretap will be placed. Every conversation will be recorded. You cannot let them hear your voice. Sophie's hair tastes like laundry soap and freshly mowed grass. Next, it is time to write your second letter. It should be sent 2 weeks after the first. In this letter, you will include something written by the kid. This is to prove the it is alive. Make it write about things you would have no way of knowing. You should also include a picture of it, fully dressed with a newspaper. The letter will remind them of the ransom amount. Say you are anxious to get the money. You will contact them soon with the drop location. Remember the smoothness. Sophie. Soft. Sweet. Syrup. After the second letter is another waiting period. This one is longer. It has to be at least a few months. That's when you will be tested. You will want to call them, to reach out. But trust your instincts. The prize is worth the waiting. Spend time with Sophie. Tell her about your father. Your secrets are safe with her. You can trust her. When the wait is over, you will send the last letter. In it, you will include a picture of the kid in different clothes, haircut but smiling, holding another newspaper. It can write something to its parents, but it isn't really important. What does matter is your exact instructions. 1. The money must be in cash and untraceable. 2. The drop point must be in the middle of a popular wooded area in the early morning, around 5 a.m. The area should be at least an hour away. 3. The entire family must bring the money to the site. 4. No cops allowed. 5. The family must wait an hour at the location, with the money in the spot. Then the kid will be released to them. 6. The reunited family must then return home immediately and never speak of this event again. Of course, the family will not follow all of the rules. Police will no doubt join them at the site, hiding. But that's okay. You never planned to go there in the first place. After all, Sophie has been dead since the day after you took her. She has to die. It's part of the plan. You use her, love her, take her hair, and then she is gone. It is gone. It is now with the other its. Bloated, empty shells, deflated balloons hanging from the ceiling. You have to make it write the letters when you take it home. You tell it what dates to write. You take the 2 pictures that first day too. Just edit the newspaper to match the correct dates. It's not hard. The waiting is hard. But the prize is worth the wait. Silken braided pigtails. You can suck on the ends as you drive to the house. It tastes like a little dead girl, but the hair was already dead. No one will be at the house when you get there. Everyone, including the authorities, will be at the drop site. Now it is their turn to wait for something that will never come. You have to break into the house. This is where you will collect your ransom. You may take anything that is of any worth: televisions, jewelry, computers. If the computers do not have a password, most don't, there is another task you must complete. Delete all photos of it. Log into any social media. Most people leave themselves logged in and delete any reference to it. Photos, quotes, artwork. Do the same around the house. Take all the family pictures. Take any art it drew, anything with its name on it. Make it look like there never was a child in the house at all. The process can take a long time. Be thorough. Think of the braids in your front seat, the smoothness, and finally as you drive away, you can collect your ransom, your prize. Sure, you can sell the items you stole. It won't make you that much money, but that's not the real reason to do this. What you will collect is the knowledge that you destroyed that family. They will never see their kid again, never smell its hair. You own it now. They will never recover. All of their treasured items are gone. You have stolen their sanity, joy, safety. They will never be able to trust again. And that fact tastes almost as good as the pigtails. So there you go. That's how you successfully ransom a child. Now all of you out there have no excuse to do it wrong. The Pancake family. That pale, huh? Jesus, I bet I look like a ghost. I feel like I've bled out 2 gallons. What? No, not a scratch. Sorry to ramble. It's just that I'm... what's the word for it? Detached. Strange feeling. Seen it enough times in the field. Sort of figured if I was ever going to experience it myself, then I would have experienced it by now. Hell of a thing. I feel like I'm floating outside of my body. Just cut the cord and I'd float away. Did you see the crime scene? Don't look at the pictures. Don't even touch the file. You'll thank me. I can't get my knees to stop rattling. Is that why you're holding onto your coffee like that? I'm shaking the table, aren't I? Hold on a second, let me back up my chair. There, that's better. Interviewer, we've got to go official now, Hob. Can you confirm for the record that you're waiving your right to an attorney? No, I'm still not interested in an attorney. I mean, yes, I'm waiving my rights. Sorry, and I'm as sound of mind as I'll ever be. Interviewer, are you sure? Yes. Interviewer, let the record show that Detective Hobson Millgate, retired, has waived his right to an attorney. I won't need a lawyer after the DA stops puking and considers taking it public. They're not showing that to a jury. Interviewer, are you ready to begin? No, but I'll talk anyway. Interviewer, what led you to the crime scene on the night in question? Would you believe I was planning a fishing trip before this started? Never mind. Hold on, I'm thinking. Hard to organize it. Never been on this side of the interrogation table before. I guess it started with a reporter. Name of Bamer. She contacted me a week ago by email and claimed she had new information on the Driscoll murders. I was the lead investigator. The case had gone unsolved for 20 years. Cold as ice. Frankly, I thought it was all bullshit at first. You know how that can be. Most of the time, it's not even on purpose. Everyone thinks they know something that will crack a case wide open. Theories are easy when you don't have to check them against evidence. The Driscoll murders were a big story around these parts. Lots of interest, lots of press. Over the years, I must have gotten a couple hundred shit theories. When I retired, I handed the investigation over to Detective Carroll, but I didn't want him to be bothered. I know he's busy with the recent gang activity. I figured I'd check it out as a courtesy. I wasn't expecting it to go anywhere. I met her for lunch at Pure Year's Cafe. Good-looking blonde gal, professional, so she didn't fit the typical profile of a hoaxer or conspiracy theorist. Not that I put too much faith in profiles. She also might have been one of those creepy gals that gets off on death. God knows I've dealt with those too. I still thought she might be pulling my leg, or maybe she had been fooled too, but she had a file with her. Looked legit. It contained what appeared to be a confession by the Driscoll. Well, he wasn't a murderer, was he? I really do wish he had been, you know. It would have been so much better for everyone. Interviewer, can you please fill us in on the relevant details of the Driscoll case? Let's see, it would have been 20 years ago now. Thinking of all those years. I mean, 20 goddamn years. That's a long time to be. Interviewer, take your time, Hob. Thanks. Throat clearing. The Driscolls were a family of 6 out in the suburbs. Upper middle class. Father was an attorney. Mother ran her own business selling pottery out of the house. 4 children, all high school age and below. Good kids. Honor roll. No criminal records to speak of. The oldest son was caught smoking dope at his high school once, but nothing much besides that. Just the typical stuff you find when you look at people too closely. They disappeared October 13th, 1994. No trace was found of the bodies. The mystery in seeing as how it was right around Halloween is probably why the press went so crazy. You still see it show up on some of those unsolved mystery shows. A whole family disappeared and no one saw a thing. No one knew where they went. A neighbor lodged a sound complaint, which is how we got involved. There was an alarm going off, and they figured it might be an intruder or something. We dispatched a vehicle. When no one answered the door, the patrolman went in to investigate. There were obvious signs of a struggle in the youngest daughter's bedroom. The bed had been flipped over and the sheets were torn. The alarm was a carbon monoxide detector. We found elevated concentrations of carbon monoxide in the fabric of all the bedspreads except the youngest daughter's. We wouldn't have known to look without the alarm. The neighbor indicated the alarm had been sounding for over a day, and he'd been unable to get anyone to answer the door during that time. We also found several aluminum canisters and some hoses in a dumpster a few blocks away. At the time, we assumed the Driscolls had been gassed and disposed of at a different location, excepting, of course, the daughter who woke up at the end and put up a struggle. The investigation gave no leads. Of course, our first thought was that the father did it. We checked it out, but he didn't have motive, no leads to follow up on. Same with the mother. Surviving family checked out clean too. The father had a few clients who might have had motive, but the means weren't there. He was a divorce lawyer, but not for anybody who could have taken out an entire family without leaving evidence. There was a chemistry teacher who lived 3 blocks away, and we investigated him for a while because of the canisters, but he alibied out. Same with a dentist who lived nearby. The wife had an online flirtation with some kid out in England, but nothing adulterous, and he wasn't even in the country at the time of the murder. We settled, unhappily, on the idea of a random killing. Hardest pieces of shit to catch when there's no pattern like that. We must have sunk tens of thousands of man-hours into this case, chasing down leads. Nothing ever came of any of it. We did track down the canisters. They were stolen from a laboratory 10 miles away. There was no security footage. We couldn't find any leads on the thief. After 6 months with no repeat attacks, the investigation went cold. The Driscolls had been knocked out and abducted. Like I said, no one ever found the bodies. Who was to say they hadn't just run off? Until, well, I'd rather only talk about that once. Interviewer, what can you tell us about how the confession wound up with Miss Bamer? She'd been following the case for some years, both personally and as a reporter. Like I said, it captured the imagination of a lot of people. Even seemingly normal folks thought it could have been aliens, ghosts, or demons. Miss Bamer published a retrospective on the murders given the 20-year anniversary. It caused a renewed interest, which happened from time to time. As usual, I declined comment citing lack of new evidence. I remembered her asking for my quote though, which is why I accepted the lunch meeting. After publication of the article, Miss Bamer claimed that she had been sent a file. She wished to have me authenticate. The most pertinent part of the file was a confession. I assured Miss Bamer that such false documents are not uncommon, especially on older cases like this, and that I'd personally heard 24 confessions of the Driscoll murders. She was insistent. Once I felt she wasn't trying to pull off a hoax or getting off on the idea of talking about a murder, I agreed to the meeting. She stated the confession had been mailed to her in the same envelope she showed to me when we met for lunch. Interviewer, can you describe its contents? Old newspaper clippings outlining the progress of my investigation. They seemed appropriately yellowed, so I'd guess they were from the trophy book of the perpetrator. There were also 6 photos alleging to be of the individual members of the Driscoll family, as well as several other photos of the facility where they had been taken. Look at that. My hands won't stop shaking, see? I'm trying as hard as I can and I just can't make it happen. I'll have to ask the paramedic for a sedative when I'm done with the statement. I don't think I'll be able to sleep otherwise. No, I'm fine for now. I don't want anything to interfere with my recollection for your recording. Just carrying it around in my head is like... Sorry, I'll stay focused. The photos were of the Driscoll family, of course. At the time, I didn't know that. The photos had aged poorly, and they could have been of anyone. It was very hard to distinguish features. However, given the elaborate nature of the file, I figured it did warrant a further look. As to the confession letter, well, it was brief. It gave an address. That's the first thing I noticed. I couldn't locate the address online, which meant it had to be old. The confession letter said, "Stop printing lies, I never killed anyone. It just took a while to get them ready for breakfast." There was no signature. I just remembered something. God damn it. We got sent a breakfast menu a month after the disappearance. Someone had drawn a red circle around a picture of pancakes. The letter said, "They're not dead, they're getting ready for breakfast." We put it in the junk lead file. Oh God. Interview. Detective Milgate, do you need a moment? Oh God. How could I have known? We tried to track down that menu. We could never find out where it had come from. It wasn't any place local. The identifying information had been cut out. I don't know what else we could have done. Dear God. Interviewer, why did you decide to personally investigate the location mentioned in the letter? Sorry, I wanted to make sure it wasn't a hoax. I still wasn't convinced. I've had 20 years of people sending me fake evidence. I guess maybe the case captured my imagination too. I always figured one day I'd think of something I'd overlooked and solve the whole thing. It felt unbelievable to have someone dump the answer in my lap. I needed to see with my own 2 eyes. Miss Bamer had pinpointed the location with city records, but neither of us was sure if it was still there. It was an abandoned industrial building. The last time it had a valid mailing address was 50 years ago. It might have caved in for all we knew. I think I also wanted to be the one to crack it, whether or not it was dumped in my lap. That case has hung over my head for 20 years. Miss Bamer and I agreed to meet there the following morning. Interviewer, can you describe the crime scene? Yes, it was an industrial building, as I stated. Approximately 120 feet long by maybe 45 feet wide. It was a wooden structure, and at first the conditions seemed to match the neighboring buildings. However, I noticed the facade had been recently patched in a few locations. Further investigation also revealed that the entrance had been chained and locked. My understanding was that it used to be a sheet metal shop. At least. Excuse me, is there a garbage can? I might vomit, thank you. Gagging, sorry. I thought I was empty. No, I want to get this done with. Then I'm going to want that sedative. I could smell something from inside the building, very faintly. I figured that would count as probable cause, not that I need it as a civilian, but you never forget the way a corpse smells. They were bad enough they had that same smell. I hadn't forgotten how to pick a lock, so I let myself inside. You know, I really do wish they had been corpses. I really do wish he had been a serial killer. I really do. Please say you believe me. Interviewer, I do. Can you describe the interior of the building? I'm trying to focus through this. I really am. I'm sorry, it's just that I'd like to go to sleep after this for a very long time. Is the paramedic here? Is the sedative ready? Thank goodness. The warehouse had not been as abandoned as we were previously led to believe. The interior had a hallway with 6 rooms. The construction was old, but visibly newer than the rest of the building. The walls between each room had been soundproofed. There were no windows to the outside or doorways between the rooms themselves. The only access was through the hallway. I tried to make Miss Bamer leave at that point. You see, the smell was stronger inside. You could feel it, the smell, like a grit getting stuck in your nose, like bits of sand all over your skin. The rooms contained presses, hydraulic presses, 4-foot by 8-foot custom presses. I couldn't figure out what they were at first because they were hovering over what looked like hospital beds. There were IV bags in each room as well as other medical equipment. That's how he kept them alive for so long, of course. I think I might be seeing black spots. Interviewer, do you need to take a break? The idea of having to start this again is worse than the idea of finishing it. Interviewer, then please describe your next course of action. The building was obviously an active crime scene. I had no doubt at this point. I was in the lair of what I believed to be a serial killer. I tried to tell Miss Bamer to leave several times. She refused on the grounds that it would not be right to leave me on my own. There wasn't much time to make an issue out of it. My opinion of her was that she was a bit nosy, but basically all right, and I didn't think she'd be a liability if she stayed out of my way. I had to make a judgment call as to whether or not I should proceed on my own in case the family was somehow impossibly still alive and perhaps in danger, or if I should leave and call for backup. I had told my wife where I was going previously, so I knew my absence would be noted and reported. If the worst happened, neither of us could get cell phone reception. Sorry, I'm rambling. It was then that I heard, not even a gasp. It was like a gasp, but not really. I don't want to describe it any more than that. There was a sound. It drew my attention further on. I had to act. That's all that matters. There were some stairs at the very far end of the warehouse descending into a basement. I told Miss Bamer to remain behind and pulled my service revolver. I had a flashlight on my person as well, and turned it on as I descended into the basement. The basement had been hand-dug, maybe even over the course of the entire 20-year disappearance. I don't know. The floor was dirt, and there was a tunnel that retreated back far enough that it had to be supported with struts at regular intervals. When my flashlight first illuminated the stack, I wished they'd been dead. I wish he'd been a serial killer. Interviewer, please take a moment. After I recovered, my first thought was, thank God they are all dead. Gagging. I'm 64 years old, for Christ's sake. I'm not a young man who can forget things anymore. When you're young, you have the sense that you're invincible and that you're never going to die. I don't have that to protect me anymore. Look at me whining when they had that done to them. It's my fault. I should have found them, saved them somehow. Interviewer, I'm sorry, Hob, I've got to ask. Can you describe the scene? Yeah, gagging. I can. I didn't know what I was looking at first. Hell, I still don't. It was a stack, maybe 2 feet thick. From the stink and coloring, it was obviously made of flesh. I thought maybe he'd hacked them up and stacked them up in pieces. That would have been bad enough. The first thing that alerted me to the truth was the eyeball. On the top of the stack was a perfectly round eyeball in the middle of a socket that had been distorted to the size of a saucer. That's when I realized what I was looking at was 20 goddamn years of torture, basically. He had the entire Driscoll family under those presses for 20 years, keeping them alive on an IV drip, increasing the pressure on them so very slowly that their bodies had time to adapt until they'd been flatted like pancakes. He squished them by about a quarter inch every year for 20 years. Then he'd pulled them out when they were too broken and wretched to move, without any chance of recovery, and stacked them on top of each other. I've got no idea what for. I don't want to know. And I was still thinking, thank God they're all dead, when the one on top started gasping again. Interviewer, what did they say? Nothing at first. It couldn't speak without help. I think it would have been Avery Driscoll. Not that I could tell much about the gender or the age, but the hair was blonde where there was hair. The head was a mess of scars. I think the son of a bitch who did this must have removed parts of their skulls. I've got no idea how he got their heads so flat otherwise. Not as flat as the rest of the bodies, but flat. Who the hell knows how their brains handled that? Their lips were punctured by teeth everywhere, after the presses had flattened out their noses, I guess. Avery was 14 when he disappeared. I've stopped shaking. Goddamn weird the way our bodies work, isn't it? What else? There was a machine, a sort of pump. I followed a hose with my flashlight and realized everyone in the stack was hooked up to the pump. I don't think they could breathe on their own, you see. Not after a while. There simply wasn't enough volume for their lungs to inflate. There was some sort of opening cut right into each of their chests. There was a switch on the pump. I don't know why I pressed it. I was in a panic. I wanted to do something. Maybe some stupid part of me thought that I switched it on, they would inflate and be okay. I switched it. It increased the volume of air to the topmost hose. I could hear the pump working harder, which is when Avery Driscoll started to scream. He begged me to kill him. He said other things too. He didn't make much sense. Kept yelling Bane of Error over and over again. Something about the family too. Didn't understand it. He was in pain, and I would hope he had gone insane several years previously. Interviewer: oh my God, my thoughts exactly. I didn't know what to do. He wouldn't stop screaming. I believe he was convinced I was his torturer. A closer look at his eye revealed that it was mostly a mess of white scar tissue. He was as blind as a bat. You know, I spoke with some burn victims once. They told me that they managed to find meaning and purpose again after a while. I don't know how anyone in the Driscoll family could have done that. I stated my name. I told him I was a detective. I told him I was there to help. I repeated it over and over again, knowing of course there was nothing that anyone anywhere could do to help. Miss Bamer arrived, drawn by the sound. Before she saw the stack, she told me that I had screamed, and she had come to help, but I do not remember having done so. Nevertheless, she arrived. Then she saw the stack and screamed, but I was intent on Avery Driscoll. He was able to hear. He became lucid for a few moments. It was a strain to understand what he said, but I will never be able to forget it. Please kill me. It hurts. I don't want to be a monster. Please kill me and tell my family I died a long time ago. I don't know if they're still looking for me. Don't let them know what happened to me. Please kill me. He could still cry, and he did, although his tear ducts were too deformed for it to be noticeable. I should have forced Miss Bamer to leave. That is the only action in the matter which I regret more than failing to solve the case 20 years ago. Not just for her own sake, but for what she did next. I don't think she could have wounded them any more deeply if she'd tried. She took away the last comfort any of them in that stack had. You see, they had not been able to speak to one another for 20 years. She said, "That's all of them, isn't it? That's the entire Driscoll family. They're all alive in there, the whole family." For 20 years, each member of the Driscoll family had been unaware their fellow inmates were the other members of their family. They'd all been holding out hope their family was okay. All of them dreaming someone out there loved them and was free from suffering. Do you know what the screams of 6 people tortured over 2 decades, smashed down to a width of 4 inches sounds like when they're all stacked on top of one another? It sounds like the gates of hell swinging open. Interviewer: I think that is enough, Detective Milgate. Not yet. It was my mistake. I should have tried harder. Track down that lead. Maybe that's what they meant, screaming that. It was my error, so it was my responsibility. I shot them. Mercy is hard, but I owed it to them. I am the one that failed to save them. It only took 1 bullet to go all the way through. I emptied my revolver, though, to make sure they didn't linger. To give them that final piece. It was the only kindness I had to give them. We left and called for backup after that. Neither Miss Bamer nor I wished to remain with the bodies. I elected not to follow the crime scene investigators back into the basement. I asked if I could make my statement and leave, and after one of them saw what I had seen, they agreed. May I have my sedative now? Interviewer: yes. Yes, of course. Thank you. Please show in the paramedic. I'll roll up my sleeve. My wife has diabetes, so I'm well aware of the routine. Oh, and please make sure you have the same courtesy available for Miss Bamer. She seemed to have it worse than me after. Poor woman couldn't even throw up or cry. Interviewer: of course. Do you know where she is now? She told the lead at the crime scene she was going home, but we haven't been able to reach her. Did you try the paper? Interviewer: which paper? The Daily World. Interviewer: are you sure? There is no one by the last name of Bamer on staff with the Daily World. Notes to the girl whose house I live in. It took me a week to find where you keep your Wi-Fi password. A whole week. I was really worried you'd thrown it away, but lo and behold, there it was in the cutlery drawer of all places. Everything about the way you organize things confuses me. I guess because you live on your own now, you just put things any old place. I know there was someone else before. I heard you talking about him on the phone. Johnny, I think? Jimmy? Anyway, I know because you said it was tough being alone. But you're not alone, of course. You have me. There's a crack in your roof where I can see down onto the street below. Don't worry about the roof, by the way. Yes, it's pretty cramped, but I like my spaces small. I've actually stuffed a few things up there to make it smaller, just bits and bobs from the recycling. I don't think you'll miss them. I can sit with my face against the wall and see down onto the street. That's where I saw you meeting up with all those people wearing black. It would have been weird anyway because you never meet anyone, but they were all rubbing your back and holding your hand and stuff. I was scared you were going to bring them in, but you just went off together, so that was okay. I don't know what I would have done if the house had filled up with people. You know, it really explains a lot that there was someone else before me, like the fact you have 2 sets of drawers in your bedroom, or how you're living in such a big house all by yourself, and do weird things like leave the Wi-Fi in the cutlery drawer, or watch the same TV show all day on a weekend. I'm not one to talk, mind. I'm addicted to my toys, like the big lump of blue tack I found a while back, which is great fun to fiddle with but doesn't taste too good, or the cigarette lighter that's fun to flick on and off, or the tube that has all the patterns in you can change. I could look down that thing for hours. I often have. That's what I normally do when you're home, or I just sit back and listen to you do the washing or run a shower or something like that. I crawl up the walls and hang there with my ear to the pipes and listen to the water rushing by. That kind of thing makes me happy. Plus, you never have anyone around, so once I got your schedule memorized, I could move around pretty free. I know what we have. It's a symbiotic relationship. That means you help me by giving me a warm place to stay and Wi-Fi, and I help you by eating all the spiders. Of course, there's no need to thank me. I fell asleep under the towels in your airing cupboard once before I found the roof, and I saw you trying to get rid of one that was living under your sink with a broom. I have never seen so much ridiculous fuss in my entire life. But it makes no difference to me how many legs something has, so I just eat them up whenever I find one, and any other thing that makes its way into the house without permission. Aside from myself, of course. Since I only pay rent in spiders, I try to keep the things I take to a minimum, but I can't say I feel too bad about stealing your socks. You have so many socks! Why would one girl need so many? I get a lot more out of them than you do anyway. I like to take them apart by the threads and then wrap all the threads around my fingers and pull them tight till the tips go purple. I can nibble my own fingertips and not feel a thing. It's pretty great. I try not to take too much food either. I've found I can usually survive off the things you leave out or throw away. Why don't you eat banana skins? Another habit of yours that confuses me a lot. I like to open my mouth all the way and drop them in whole, no chewing. I've never needed too much food to get by. I really like butter though. Not to eat so much as just to play with. You once left a block out by the window in the sun and it went all melty while you were at work, so I sort of started playing with it. Once I'd stuck my finger in once, it was kind hard to stop. I had it looking like a puddle by the end. But then I realized it was 5 and you'd be home soon, so I had to press it back into a rectangle as best I could. But then I heard you opening the door. Boy, I was so startled. I went into the cupboard under the stairs, you know, the one you never go in as it's full of men's shoes and coats and things, and I watched you come in through the doorway. But then came the weird part. You didn't even notice the butter. All you did was make a cup of tea and then give up halfway through and start crying. Then you ordered a Chinese and barely ate any before throwing it away. You see what I mean about your habits. I'm sorry, but it's just weird. Sometimes if I'm having a bad night, I like to get under your bed while you're asleep. It's nice because I can hear you breathing, and then I can match my breath up with that. I lie there for ages, gasping in and out, and if you get up for the bathroom or anything, I have to go completely still and hold my breath. I don't know why I do it. I guess it's fun. You're the first person whose company I've ever enjoyed. You cooked dinner the other evening. I noticed because you played music, which you never do, and you made something which took almost an hour and a half with about 1 million ingredients. I crept down to the top of the staircase and I could see you bouncing around doing moves with the spoon. It was so funny I had to cover my mouth to keep from laughing. Then I saw something that got me really scared. You'd laid 2 places at the table. I thought there was someone else in the house and climbed all the way up to the ceiling thinking they'd see me. As I was hanging there, I saw you serving 2 plates and I couldn't move for the panic. Another person. I just knew I wouldn't like them as much as you, that they'd ruin everything and make me go all crazy like I used to be. I didn't know what to do. I was ready to hurt them. Really hurt. That's how scared I was. Then you sat down. You lit the candle on the table and started eating by yourself. Nobody else showed up, and after you were done, you took the other food and threw it away. Even though I was relieved, I felt kind of bad that the other person never showed up. You didn't seem sad, though. It was like you'd expected it to just be you. After you went to bed, I went through the bin and ate some of the food you threw away. It was delicious. I knew something was wrong the next day because you didn't leave for work, and then you ran a bath in the middle of the afternoon. After you'd been in there for ages and ages, I started to get this horrible bad feeling. I crawled down to the landing. The bathroom door was open a crack, so I peeked through. I saw your hand. It was hanging, not in a natural way, and there was this long red line going down it, and then I realized. I ran back upstairs. I'm a coward. I know I'm a coward. I hid under my pile of stuff and started to cry. I thought about running away. I thought about the color a pink bath mat goes when it's covered in blood. I thought about how much I wanted to be somewhere else. But most of all, I thought about you, and how little sense you make. What I'm trying to say is that I'm sorry I lit your roof on fire. It was the only way I could think to get people to come, It actually worked better than I expected. That recycling stuff sure did burn. I ran down to the cupboard under the stairs and curled up with my hands over my head until I heard them kick the door down and carry you out. There was a lot of confusion and bad language, but they found you and I heard one say you were still breathing. So my favorite place in the whole world is gone now. Most of my things as well, though I did think to grab the pattern tube. The rest is just a big black wig on top of your house. But I'm not scared. You'll get better, and when you come back, I'll still be here. I don't think it's nice to be alone.
Has your husband been standing still?
The woman at the door said her husband was inside my home. She was agitated and ran her fingers through her unwashed hair. You have the wrong address. It's just me, I said, then lied. And my boyfriend is here. No, please, just listen to me, she said, placing a hand on the doorframe and leaning in toward me. I said I couldn't help her, said again she had the wrong address, then shut the door. But I could still hear her. I don't know what he'll do. Let me in, let me find him, she said, her muffled voice sharpening while her palm drummed on the door. He stands still. I froze in the entryway and waited full minutes after it sounded like she had left, in case her ear was pressed to the door. I didn't give much thought to her husband at first. There was something off about her, how she tried to talk so calmly, even though it was obvious she was coiled tight enough to snap. She kept floating on her toes, looking into my apartment behind me. But she also didn't seem outcast, or even neglected really. Her cashmere sweater and tapered pants told a different story, so I searched my apartment with the crowbar I kept under the sheets in a linen closet. No one was in the front rooms, with their windows facing the street. I had been there all day, so it was impossible for anyone to have broken in that way. Then I remembered the old dumbwaiter shaft. It was behind the kitchen door, shut behind a hinged metal slab. To keep noise from bleeding between apartments, it was no longer an open shaft, but a dusty compartment used as a pass-through for cables. I brought along my biggest chef knife, from the drawer across from the refrigerator. The steel panel was painted the same color as the wall and had no handle or latch. Instead, there was a small, jagged hole punched in one side with several drill bit plunges. I dug a screwdriver out of the junk drawer and tried to pry it open with a single jerk, so I could step back and hold out the blade in my other hand. Instead, it swung open with a painfully slow creak, and I dropped the knife, scaring myself even more when it clattered at my feet. Without thinking, I bent down to pick it up. Kneeling on the floor, I imagined a pale hand reaching out, into my hair and skull, but when I stood up and looked inside, there was nothing there, just the dark. It was empty. When I left the kitchen and crossed by the front door again, I saw that the woman had shoved a piece of paper in my door like a takeout menu. It was a torn envelope, like something pulled crumpled from the trash, and had written on it the words, "Listen, please." Then I heard her whisper from low down on the door, even below where I had kneeled to pull at the scrap of paper. The first time my husband was around the corner from our French doors, in the hollow where my desk meets the printer cabinet. He must have been there all morning. He was standing straight up like a sunflower, but I didn't see him until I got up from the desk and bumped my ankle. When I looked up, suddenly he was there, staring at nothing. The second time, he was behind an all-glass display case in our entryway, pinched between a pane and the wall just inside the front door. The whispering stopped, and I realized I was barely breathing. I was still kneeling, and my knees were beginning to get sore. "Are you still there?" the whispered voice asked. I didn't answer. He's gotten really skinny and goes through tubes of high SPF sunscreen whenever he is called out to a site, so now he's white as an electric socket. He can suppress his presence and take away your intuitive sense that another person is nearby. He's practicing. He's getting better. He knows where your eyes land and the spaces they slide over. "Go away," I screamed, before retreating to the farthest corner of my apartment away from the front door. It took me a while to calm down, with some TV and all the lights on. I didn't pay attention to the show, but told myself that the woman at the door had a mental illness and a persecution complex, and she wanted to pull me into her delusion. I crept to the window and peered into the park across the street from my house. It was small and mostly mown, with a picnic pavilion and a swing set, but right across from me was a shock of forest, rising up curling and unwanted. The sun was still up, but low enough for this thicket to be dark in its own shadows. I looked for her there, expecting I don't know what. 2 red eyes? I didn't see her, and opened the blinds fully. A few families were playing volleyball down at the farthest end of the park, but it was otherwise empty. Then I caught the blue light off an e-cig. It was her, seated in a shadowed beach chair, with her legs stacked casually in front of her. I could barely see her face, but it looked as if she was staring into my windows. I debated whether to go out to confront her, but when I turned around I saw her husband. I didn't scream. My throat snapped shut on my breath. Through the kitchen doorway across the room I could see my dishwasher and him standing next to it, one leg against the fridge. He wasn't standing straight, but bent forward at a right angle, his back aligned with the marble countertop. One arm was held pinned against his thigh, the other down, then the wrist up, with fingers out in odd angles. His face pointed forward, a line atop his body like a bullet on a shell casing, with his eyes aimed to one side of me and far away. He wore an expression of rapture on a pale face. His lips were glittering red. He didn't move or react and showed no signs of being detected, but I still expected those eyes to swivel and land on me. Didn't feel I could move or look away until it did. I forced myself to clap, then to wave my arms, but there was no reaction. "You," I said, "sir," I added. "You need to leave." He didn't react, and it wasn't just as if he was ignoring me. There wasn't a tremor or breath. He stayed so still it was as if the whole world had frozen. I called 911, of course. The operator urged me to get out of the house as quickly as possible. I stayed on the line with the operator, but there was nothing left to say. My only way out was past him. Acid filled my stomach. There was no way I could cross that room. I considered tossing something at him, or attacking him, but there was nothing more dangerous than a TV remote nearby. The operator said something about officers on the way, and my phone slipped from my hand in my rush to bring it back to my ear. My eyes never dropped from the husband, who didn't flinch when my phone crunched on impact, then clattered across the floor and under the couch. I lowered myself to my hands and knees and considered crawling over and reaching under until I realized it would put him out of sight. It was better to escape. Maybe I could crawl by him without touching him and he'll stay frozen. Or would he just grab me when I got close? I didn't have a choice. At the threshold between hardwood and tile, I looked down at my hands on the floor, and when I looked up, he was gone. But it was only for an instant, because suddenly I could see him again just in front of me. He hadn't moved. My eyes had let him go and struggled to find him again, like he wasn't where I had expected, or if I had somehow forgotten him. The arms holding me up shook so violently that I pitched forward, landing on the side of my face with a smack. I landed right at his feet, but didn't touch him. Pushing back on the heels of my hands, I rolled backwards and slammed into the cabinet behind me, hard enough that I heard the fiberboard crack inside the door. I could crawl by him now, but first watched him for any sign of movement. He was in a khaki t-shirt that didn't quite match the wood cabinetry or stand out from the white refrigerator at his back, nor were his dark pants much of a match for the brushed chrome of the dishwasher, though I could see he had a sliver of something shimmery silver, like a lanyard loop, hanging out from his pocket. I don't know how he could have disappeared from my sight, but he didn't seem to notice me. I strained to keep an eye on him over my shoulders as I crawled past, until I couldn't move slowly any longer. I scrambled to my feet, tumbling into a standing position, then into a headlong run, where I couldn't tell my heartbeats from the pounding of feet on the floor. After struggling with the lock, I finally squeezed through my front door and shut it behind me without looking back. The police came, searched my apartment, found no one. I tried to explain that he might still be there, that they just hadn't seen him, but they wouldn't come back in with me. They wouldn't search the park either. They were annoyed I wouldn't go back inside, but eventually left. I didn't have my phone and didn't know where to go, so I wandered out of my building in a daze. It was dark out now, but the night air felt good. I saw a car double parked, but didn't pay it any attention until the woman pushed open the passenger side door from the driver's seat and waved me over. I'd be embarrassed to describe the horrible things I said to her, but she was calm and composed. She knew how to handle her husband standing still, and was nothing like the woman who first confronted me on my doorstep. I don't want to give her real name, so I'll call her Flora. "I'll teach you to see him," was the first thing Flora told me once I was able to listen. I didn't want to see him or to go anywhere with this person, but I didn't know what else to do. She drove me far outside of the city until I could see stars over a sprawling suburbia. Somewhere nearer the highway, where duplex condos faded into industrial parks, she turned into a multi-acre construction site. It was all blonde dirt, scraped and marked by bulldozer treads. At the center was a cinder block frame that might one day grow into a big box store. She turned off her headlights, and suddenly the feeling I had ignored, in favor of her serene understanding of my situation, could no longer be ignored. I was struck dumb with fear, my sore muscles protesting at being called back to alert. Had I met a couple working together? But she kept talking reasonably, kept her instructions simple, and I found no moment to protest. Instead, I followed her, even let her take me by the hand and pull me, in a circuitous path, out into the center of the standing blocks. She laid out a picnic blanket and urged me to lay on my back next to her with a friendly pat. Inside, I was screaming. "We're in the middle of one of the dimmer meteor showers that doesn't get headlines," she said, "but we can see one every few minutes if we know how to look. Men who stand still," she told me, "can't be searched out like a bird among branches, or a face in the crowd. That is a search for specificity. Even if you could live in a state of constant scrutiny, where every pixel of reality is examined, you would not often find these unmoving men. They slip into your scotoma and escape your attention, because they are no longer objects to be found." "There was one," she said, pointing to a part of the sky. "Did you see that one?" I hadn't. "Because you are darting around looking for shooting stars," she said, instead of looking at the surface of reality. Her husband had receded into the sky of our day-to-day existence, she said. When standing still, he wasn't an object to be found in space. but had shut down every part of himself to become permanent. She taught me to make my eyes flat and to search without an idea of what I wanted to see. To see them, you can no longer want anything from the sky, she said. You have to deaden yourself to know what surrounds you. I laughed when I saw the first shooting star and forgot about my terrible day. Then there was another and another. Now please, please, don't be afraid, she said, sitting up and placing her hand on my goose-pimpled forearm. I looked around with my meteor eyes. There were men standing in strange shapes, pressed against the cinder blocks, and standing in the mud at bent angles, and even across the street, holding themselves straight.
I see them everywhere now, she whispered. There are so many of them standing still,